Hey Rip City, this is Deni Avdija, and you're listening to The Briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Episode 167 of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. It's September. The NBA season is almost upon us. Vacations are over. Back to work here on The Briefcase. On this edition, we'll talk about Deni Avdija starring at EuroBasket, aka the European Championships, for his home country, Israel. And also, the Rip City Remix released their 2025-26 schedule on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Well, I was hoping we might have a few more players participating at EuroBasket or just various other international competitions this summer. It's a great way to kind of have some basketball to pay attention to before the season starts. I know some people are like, well, but what if they get injured in international play? Or what if they're too tired after international play? And, that's not wrong, but I think having the opportunity to play for your country, I think really means a lot to basically every player. And so getting those opportunities, I think it's more important than the like, well, but what does that mean for the Portland Trail Blazers? Also, I was kind of thinking about this a little bit ago. I don't ever recall there really being a player that got injured in international play that kind of affected him in the NBA. The other way goes that way all the time. Guys get injured and then can't play for their national teams. Victor Wembanyama being a good example of that in this cycle. But I can't really recall it happening the other way. It probably has before, and I understand. These guys get paid an incredible amount of money, so teams are generally a little concerned when they're playing games that aren't their games. But again, it's for country, so it makes perfect sense to me. And even though we didn't have a whole lot of players, we could have had Toumani Camara, but he decided not to play for Belgium. Could have had Yang Hansen playing for the Chinese national team at the Asia Cup. He decided not to do that. Our guys from France, particularly around Repair, didn't make the French national team, which I think is a little bit weird. But Deni, obviously, on the Israeli national team and has been having a fantastic tournament for Israel in Group D at EuroBasket, aka the European Championships. They're still in group play. Israel has advanced, and much of that has been due to the play of Deni Avdija, definitely more due to Deni's play than probably any other player on the team. This year, too, in EuroBasket, it's interesting that, for years and years and years, and well, I won't say that, but for the last, I would say, couple cycles, so for the last 8 years, there has generally been a number of European teams that have multiple NBA players. And, you think back to, 10, 13 years ago with Spain, a starting five is basically all NBA players and a really good squad. And then you had kind of the Lithuanians, and at some point time you had the Serbians and the Slovakians. But that's really kind of fallen off a little bit. So now, for the most part, there are some teams. Germany, it would be a team that has multiple players now that is really starting to ascend. But for the most part, despite the fact of how big basketball has become in Europe and the fact that, a bunch of MVP or MVP candidates at least are all Europeans, you would think that would result in some of their national teams being better. But actually, it's kind of gone the other direction. It seems like, for the most part, a lot of these international teams have maybe like one or two NBA guys, and then everyone else are international players. And so what that has resulted in is there really not being any kind of real odds-on favorite for EuroBasket this year, and really for kind of a lot of international competitions. And so, you don't have a situation where it's like, well, France has got this thing squared away, or Serbia is going to get it. Or, I mean, I would even say now Germany is probably one of the favorites just because they have a broad collection of NBA players. And then you have a guy like Deni who, like there's good talent on the Israeli national team, but he's the only NBA guy on that team. And so what's resulted in that, same thing with like Luka Doncic is kind of the only guy on the Slovenian national team. And so a lot of guys are kind of having to kind of take on more in order for their teams to have success. And Deni has done absolutely that, absolutely leading the way for the Israelis at EuroBasket. Chauncey Billups and Mike Schmitz have both been there in Katowice, Poland, to support Deni and to watch the games. And for Mike, I'm guessing do a little bit of scouting as well. Group play has been spread out over a couple different locations in Europe. Now they're getting to the knockout round, though. It's going to be in Latvia, and Israel has moved on to the knockout round, even though they still have one game to play in group play. And not entirely sure how that game is going to go, but we'll talk about that just in a second here. But as I mentioned, Deni and Israel are now 3-1 in Group D, and that's a group that includes France, Poland, Slovenia, and Belgium. and Iceland. So, kind of a middle group, some real talent there. France, I've been paying attention to the French national team for a long time because of Nick Batum. And like they always have talent, but they just don't ever really seem to put it together consistently. They've had success. I believe they did win the last EuroBasket, I think. But with the talent they've never really reached the heights that I think you would assume they would when you consider some of the players of French nationality. And some of that is because they've had injuries and they just haven't ever been able to get everyone kind of on the team at the same time. And that's kind of been the situation for the French in this tournament as well. No Wembanyama. So again, not like the team you just assume is going to run roughshod over the tournament, which they haven't. So so Group D, it's a tough group, but I wouldn't say it's the most difficult group at EuroBasket. Poland being in their group is difficult because Poland is one of the host countries, and as I mentioned on Twitter, host countries in international play, particularly again when there's not like a real like dominant team or a couple like few dominant teams. If you're one of the hosts, like you just get that juice from being the host team, and like you can probably over overperform, and I feel like Poland has done that. Poland has been probably the best team in Group D thus far, despite again really not having a whole lot of NBA guys, and in fact, I don't think they have any NBA guys, and nor a real kind of like lineage of success in international plays. So let's go ahead and I keep getting sidetracked there because I do really like international play, but let's just talk about Israel here. They got off group play with an 83-71 victory versus Iceland on August 28th. If Poland doesn't have much of a history of success, Iceland is basically just kind of trying to get stuff together, though. Shout out to the Icelanders. Such a small country, being able to qualify for a lot of these international events, just in Europe at least, it's pretty impressive. I know their soccer team has had some success as of late. I don't know exactly how big Iceland is, but I know it's not very big. The fact that they have had the amount of I won't say success, but at least representation on the international stage. I think, you got to tip your cap to the Icelanders, though it was not enough to beat Israel in that opening game in Group D for both teams. Deni put up 20 points on 5 of 12 shooting from the field, 0 of 5 shooting from three to go with 9 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 assists in 29 minutes. As I mentioned, 83-71 victory, which first game of the tournament, you win by 12. You feel kind of good about that. But when you watch the game, I think you can kind of tell, like, not exactly a great game for the Israelis, and you look at Deni's percentages in that one too. Like it was kind of like he's getting volume shots up, which if you need to do that, that's great. But like you could kind of see that like maybe they don't look exactly as good as they probably hoped you would see, or at least if you're an Israeli fan that you would want them to see. And then so they have that game, and then they go into their second game versus Poland, and the issues that they had in the game versus Iceland really become evident in the game versus Poland. As I mentioned, the host country, you got the crowd behind you. They've got a kid, I believe his name is Jordan Lloyd, who's an American who has Polish citizenship now, who's been having a really good tournament. And they were able to knock off the Israelis 66-64 on August 30th. Deni had a chance in that game to win with a three, couldn't get it to go. And again, that was one of those games where it's like, you could tell that like it wasn't going really well for the Israelis, and then Deni's like, "Well, I'll just try to take this thing over," and that's pretty tough to do when one when you're playing the host country, and two when kind of that you only have one or two games to win the thing, and a slip up here or there could really end your tournament for lack of a better term. So the fact that they ended up losing that game, I think maybe kind of shook them out of whatever maybe slumber they might have been in. Couldn't score in that game versus Poland from start to finish. They only shot 37% from the field and 23% from three. Deni in that game had 23 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in the loss. And he played 38 minutes as well too, which is a lot of minutes to play. Um, basically that's the entire game in an international game. So, and then the fact they ended up losing that game, definitely a bad sign for Israel. And then they had a game the next day versus France. And at that point in time, you're thinking like, boy, Deni just played 38 minutes. They're playing French, one of the better teams in the tournament. This might be going the opposite direction for them. So after struggling versus Iceland and losing to Poland, they faced France in the second game of back-to-back. And it seemed like that might be a make or break for Israel, and they ended up making it. Instead, they bounced back after that loss to Poland, putting up their best performance of the tournament with an 82-69 win on August 31st. France actually had a 1 point lead going into the fourth quarter, but Israel went on an 11-0 run to pull away in the fourth quarter. They would go on to outscore the French 27-13 in the fourth quarter to secure that victory and really set themselves up to advance and potentially even win Group D. Deni, easily his best performance of the tournament so far, going 7 of 10 from the field, 3 of 4 from three for 23 points to go with 8 rebounds, 1 assist, and 1 steal in 26 minutes. As I mentioned, beating France that at that point was an unbeaten team, that pretty much assured that they were going to be able to advance. And then I think when Slovenia, I think, beat Iceland, it secured Israel advancing. So they are officially moving on to the round of 16. And after getting a 92-89 victory versus Belgium on Tuesday, Israel was up big going into that game as well, or going to the fourth quarter of that game as well. Kind of let their guard down, as you know, a lot of times you see that in the NBA. Usually you don't see it as much in international play because guys still kind of, they're playing internationally. They're playing for country, so they still want to win by a fairly decent sized margin. It's not like you got a game the next day versus one of another 29 teams. So they kind of let their guard down. I think Deni had to come back to the game in the fourth quarter to make sure they cemented that one away. If they had lost that game, again, they still probably advance, but really probably hurts the confidence of that team. But they were able to get that victory versus Belgium. No Toumani Camara on that one, as I mentioned, did not decide to play at EuroBasket, and luckily for the Israelis, because if Toumani had been there, I don't know if they're able to get that one. Deni finishes that game with 22 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal in 34 minutes. Again, another game where Israel was kind of able to probably take it a little bit easy, probably maybe took it a little bit too easy, let it get down to one possession game in the fourth quarter, but were able to squeak the win out in that one to ensure that they would advance to the round of 16. Israel still has one group game left to play versus Slovenia on Thursday. Final group stage game for both teams, but both teams have both now qualified for the knockout round. So I wouldn't be surprised if that means that both Deni and a guy like Luka Doncic don't end up playing in that game. I guess you could be playing for matchups, but like it's so I think it's probably pretty difficult to figure out like, okay, if we win this game, we'll get this team, or if we lose this game, we'll get this team. Because there's 4 groups. The groups are all mixed up. Even going into the last day, when you only have 4 games in your group stage, like one game changes a whole lot. So I'm curious to see if those guys end up playing on Thursday in the final game of the group for both Israel and Slovenia. My guess is they probably don't. At least with Deni too. Like he's played quite a few minutes in the tournament at this point, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're maybe trying to get him a few extra days off. Though they will have quite a few extra days off, as Group D, they start the knockout round on Sunday, September 7th. So we don't know exactly yet who Deni and the Israelis will be playing, but you do know that they will play their first game of the knockout round, potentially their only game of the knockout round, on Sunday, September 7th. Those games are available through FIBA's website. I think their website or their platform is called like 1861 Courtside or something like that. It is a pay service, so you have to pay for it, but these things end up getting out one way or another. So if you are interested in watching some Trailblazers play in for their national teams, Sunday, September 7th, that's when the knockout round starts. So Israel will be playing sometime on that day. Not sure when just yet, but I will keep you updated on Twitter when I know that. But congratulations to Deni on advancing there, and we'll see what they can do in the rest of the tournament. As I mentioned earlier, after Labor Day, it's kind of the unofficial start of the NBA season for teams. Everyone kind of in the office, summertime, everyone's taking vacations and kind of doing their own thing when things quiet down. This has been a really busy off season. But, usually after Labor Day, that's when everyone kind of starts to get back into the rhythm of kind of preparing for the upcoming season with training camp starting at the end of the month. Though there's still options to kind of get out and do some fun stuff from time to time. And one of those things you can do is get ready to rock the night away with the legendary classic rock icons Bachman Turner Overdrive at Spirit Mountain Casino. Join the folks at Spirit Mountain Casino on Friday, September 19th for an electrifying evening of timeless hits, unforgettable energy, and a concert experience that will leave you singing along all night long. Whether you're a lifelong fan or discovering BTO for the first time, this is your chance to hear iconic anthems such as Taking Care of Business and You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet performed live at the Northwest premium entertainment destination. Bachman Turner Overdrive has been rocking audiences since the 1970s with their high-octane sound and unforgettable lyrics. Their music defines a generation and continues to resonate with audiences today. Their performance is your chance to experience their legendary sound in an intimate, state-of-the-art venue at Spirit Mountain Casino. Tickets are on sale now to the general public, and VIP packages are also available for those looking to elevate their experience at Spirit Mountain Casino, Highway 18 and Grand Ronde. Elevate your game. Well, after the NBA released the schedule for all 30 teams a few weeks ago, the G League released their schedules this week, including the schedule for the Rip City Remix. They will begin their 2025-26 campaign on November 7th at the Santa Cruz Warriors. That starts a 6-game road trip with stops that include the Valley Suns, the South Bay Lakers, and the San Diego Clippers. Jumping into a jam-packed December, the Rip City Remix will host 8 games at Chiles Center, starting off with their home opener on December 2nd, 6 p.m., versus San Diego Clippers. That's just right down the road from me at University of Portland. The Remix has also curated an engaging promotional calendar for each of their 24 home games to give fans even more of a look forward to the season, which hopefully you're looking at right now. 2 celebration nights intended to uplift the diverse and vibrant cultures that thrive in Portland include the MLK celebration and women's empowerment. Additionally, expect to see the return of fan favorite Bingo Wednesdays and newly introduced Trivia Tuesdays. Awesome events at Rip City Remix games. Obviously, the basketball is a lot of fun, but they do a lot of really fun activation things for the crowd as well that's outside of basketball. The tip-off tournament, which I don't really understand, but is how the G League starts off their schedule, as it's called the tip-off tournament, for the duration of the first 14 games of the season, is the tournament culminating in the NBA G League Winter Showcase on December 19th through the 22nd. The Remix will then compete in their first regular season games at that event in Orlando. 36 games on the regular season schedule will determine their playoff eligibility and seeding for the NBA G League playoffs, which start in the spring. Season ticket packages and half-season ticket packages are on sale now as well, starting at just $120. Single tickets can be purchased beginning on October 1st. All Remix games stream for free on various platforms, including Blazer Vision. Stacey Sissoko and Caleb Love are two-way players for the Portland Trail Blazers, and they have one more two-way spot left. I wouldn't be surprised if they had players come in at training camp and maybe compete for that last two-way spot. Blazers are at 15 players right now on their regular roster, so they don't have any leeway in terms of adding players to the regular NBA roster, but they do have one two-way position left. Two-way contracts, as you probably know, but in case you don't, allows players to play a certain amount or spend a certain amount of time with the NBA team while also splitting time with the G League team. So the Blazers, as I mentioned, Caleb Love, Stacey Sissoko, 2 players on two-way contracts. They have a third two-way contract that they have not yet used. I would be shocked if they probably didn't use that at some point in time. So another player there as well. Also worth mentioning too that I imagine that at some point in time, Yang Hansen's probably going to be playing some games with the Rip City Remix, having a lot of opportunities at that point in time to play a lot of minutes. So, on one hand, I think we saw Yang at Summer League look like he's maybe probably deserving of some minutes in the regular season. Though obviously you got Donovan Clingan, you got Robert Williams, you got Dwap Reith. So, the Blazers have a really good center rotation as well, and Hansen is going to have to crack that in order to get some minutes. If that doesn't happen, I imagine he will spend some time with the Remix, and those games would be obviously great to see. A little lower competition, giving Yang a chance to show what he can do, as we saw in Summer League. Though, again, I wouldn't all be surprised if he spent most of his time with the Blazers. Though I imagine at some point in time they'll probably get him a little run with the Remix. And sometimes it's like, if you're on a road trip and a guy isn't really playing in the rotation, sometimes you'll leave him behind. When you're at home, there's no reason to basically not have the players with you, but sometimes it's about practice time. It's about playing reps in games. So a possibility that we see Yang Hansen playing for the Remix this year. Again, I would imagine at some point he will play some games with the Remix. He looked like, he's going to play some rotation minutes after Summer League for the Trailblazers. But again, when you're a rookie and you're young and you're a center, things come pretty fast. The Summer League is a good start, but it is not on the level of what you're going to see in the NBA. So we'll see how that goes for Young Hansen. But long story short, I think you're probably going to see Yang play some games for the remix this year, or Hansen play some games for the remix this year. And then an intimate setting at University of Portland, that would be pretty fun. And as I mentioned, all those games stream on YouTube, on Blazer Vision, on various streaming platforms as well. So if you can't make it out to games, or if they're on the road, you have a lot of options to watch remix games, see kind of the next generation of the Trailblazers, and see some of the young guys that I know a lot of fans are really interested in seeing. And I think Caleb Love is a guy who, after Summer League, I think a lot of people are really excited about the way he played there and what his future for the Trailblazers might be. So a chance to probably check out Caleb a bit there as well. So G League schedule is out. Check it out. Season tickets, half-season tickets are very affordable. Seasonal game tickets go on sale October 1st. And I also imagine, too, that for the most part, if you see someone playing on the remix, whether it's a Trailblazers player or a player from another team that maybe you want to get your eyes on, tickets are always quite available. I think you can probably get them at the door as well. So definitely check out some games for the Rip City remix if you haven't yet already. Check out their schedule. Maybe pick out a few games to check out. You won't regret it. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me, as always. Little light on news here in the next couple weeks, I would imagine, but we'll still be back. We'll probably look at some of the NBA futures for our betting on the Blazers segment. We'll maybe try to catch up with some of the players as they start filtering back into town. This is about the time of the year where most guys are out of town. They usually come back a couple weeks early, and that's when they kind of start doing informal workouts. So I'm guessing maybe there's a few guys here and there in town, but I would imagine the next week and a half, 10 days, you'll probably start seeing more players return to town. And at that point in time, maybe get a chance to talk to some of those guys, see what they've been doing in their off season. But until then, thanks for joining me on The Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Casey Holdahl. Go Blazers.